Hello all, we will start in a minute. Okay, so let's start. Good afternoon. Let me know if at all I am audible and my whiteboard screen is visible. And will you all be able to chat? Yeah. Like, can you just put something like hi in a chat window? If it is on, if it is visible, if it is available for all. Hi, Shreyas. Yes, Jyoti. If the chat window is disabled, then maybe what you can do is you can just put it in the QA session itself. I mean, QA part itself. You can just, put it. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's continue. I hope you're able to hear me now. So let's continue. No problem. Okay, so this session is going to be all about design and prototyping. Okay, so this is something that we will be talking about. So you have had, I guess, a session earlier, which is regarding what I would say, regarding something called as requirement analysis, right? So there was some, I can say, problem in scheduling today. So I guess there was a session which was like, which was supposed to be scheduled for a particular group. So I guess the same link was sent to, we can say, multiple groups. So we had one session, what we called as the same session. We had at 10 to, I can say, 11:30. Now this is for, you can say, batch 2 now. That is going to be from 12 to 1:30. Okay. So considering that you all have gone through something which is called as requirement analysis related, what I would say, session. So requirement gathering, requirement analysis, if you're done with, let's continue. Now, talking about something which is called as, rather a design and prototyping thing. Okay. So let's plan to understand that now. Here we go. Give me a minute. So what we have here is, let's say, in typical software development process that we generally have, it's like this. We can go with something like requirement gathering. Okay, so we normally go with requirement gathering first. Then we go with something in typical phases. We go with something like requirement analysis. Okay, then we go and do something which is called as a design over here. This is the phase that we need to discuss today. Then there is something which we do is something which is called as coding over here. Plus we do unit testing as well. Coding and unit testing. Unit testing is something which developers do, okay, in general. After that, what we'll have here is simple testing phase that we do. And then finally, what we do is we deliver or deploy. Okay. During deployment, there can be several stages. There can be something which can be you do deploy on staging server first, which means a simple, what we call it as a client-like machine, or a final, I can say a production-like machine, but it's in your area, your control. And then finally, we have staging and then production. So you deploy it on final production environment. And then obviously there can be something which can be maintenance over here. And obviously inside a maintenance, there can be something like you can say maybe some bugs, or not bugs exactly, but then requirement changes. Some you can say maybe feature configuration, which can come in picture. So, and then obviously based on requirement changes, the entire cycle can repeat itself. Okay. These are typical phases that your application generally goes through. Now, what did you do so far? You did, go through some phases so far. So I'm very sure about it. You have already talked about, or we already have talked about something like requirement gathering. Now, when it comes to requirement gathering, how do you gather the requirement? So in general, in industry, you will find out people to gather the requirement using certain techniques. So one of the techniques that we use is something called as we conduct interviews or mock interviews. Okay. So we ultimately interview the people, one, who are the stakeholders. We interview the people who are going to be the end users of your application. Okay. If we don't find those users, then we also have a mock or dummy users whose interviews we will pick up. Okay. We also study something which is called as some competitors application as well. So I will say out here, there's a lot of things, we need to consider while we gather the requirement. Correct requirement gathering is absolutely important over here. So what we do here is this. One, we gather the requirement. So we simply specify over here something like conduct interviews. So interviews with whom? One is the stakeholders of your application. Okay, so stakeholders. So stakeholder interviews is what we go through. Maybe I should again put it over here. Stakeholders. There's another thing that we do over here is maybe I'll put it here. So stakeholder interviews, then something called as interviews of the user. User interviews is what we do. Maybe I should put it like this. Okay, so stakeholder interviews, user interviews is what we go with. Then what we do is something which is called as mock interviews or dummy interviews, which means team members they themselves can act as a final user, and they can very well, maybe tell them by putting themselves in the shoes of the end user and then pretend to be the actual user, and they can actually go and maybe give some sort of, you can say, applications needs. So there can be mock interviews that you can conduct. And then while you conduct these interviews also, these interviews can be done, we can say interviews on, so called, you can say either a plain paper, you can have these details put up. Okay, and or this can be recorded interviews also. So plain paper, medium can be anything over here, maybe some video recording that you can have, and so on. Normally the current trend is we do record these interviews, so that if at all tomorrow the end customer or end users or stakeholder says I never said this, you always have a proof of it. So you can always have a video recording available for, you can say, these interviews also. And then finally, just to understand the requirements, what you do is you always and always go with something which is called as study competitors app. So study rival app over here. So I would simply say study rival app if any. Okay, app if any, I would say. So if there is any other application, rather there is already available application in the market, you can very well go through that application. Okay, there may not be any application. So in such cases, what you'll have to do is you will have to simply, maybe rely on your mock interviews. So these are the stages that you typically go through. Okay. Now, once you are going through all of this, what may happen out here is you need to ensure that you are correct in terms of requirement understanding or gathering. Okay, so what you do is you put up these requirements in technical words. That's the first part. Okay, and then based on those technical words, like verbs and nouns, you can identify out of it. And then after doing that, what you do in general is in this next phase, you try to identify something which is called as certain diagrams. So in the requirement analysis phase, what you do is you actually define something which is called as use cases. Okay, so yeah, identify something which is like, you can say, use cases, users and cases, I should say, users and actions. That is use case diagram over here. Proof is use case diagram. So identify use cases is users and actions. Then what you do after all this, what you also do is you also try to get approval for something which is called as a flow. So you do something which is called as flow diagram approval. Okay, identify and confirm the flow over here. So ultimately, proof of this identify users in action is something called as use case diagram. You go with use case, and here it is something which is called as flow diagram over here. Flow diagram you actually want to put up here. So these are a couple of diagrams that you draw, and you actually get a confirmation from the client. So you identify the users and actions, okay, and you confirm the flow in this next step that we have got, and then ensure that you have a use case over here and ensure that you have a flow diagram over here. These are the things that you ultimately confirm from your end customers over here. So this is something, this is way or a proof of concept that this is what you will do from your end customer perspective that way. Okay, so once you have a approval of something which is called as use case and flow diagrams, at this stage itself, you will have something which is called as mockup design. Okay, so what does it mean by a mockup design over here? Let's try to understand that first. Let me put up here some content. So this is phase number 1, this is phase number 2, this is phase number 3. You go with, this is another phase that we actually do the coding. Later on we do the testing, then we do the deployment, and then we maintain the application over here. Okay, so let's say we are done with stage number 1 already. Now we are in a requirement, let's say in the requirement analysis we are done with, let's say, use case and flow diagram, which means identify the users and identify the actions. Have it in a detailed manner drawn. Okay, have the flow diagram in a detailed, literally baby step is what you need to pick up over here. Small steps you need to note down in a flow diagram and get approval for it. Okay, get approval. That's the first thing to do over here. Get the approval specifically for this. So here important part is get the approval for these diagrams over here. Once the customer or client approves, like, okay, this is absolutely correct, our understanding is correct, it means. Okay, at the same time, one of the, you can say, few things which happens over here is you also have here a mock diagram, or you can say a mock design also confirm from the client over here. Mock design is typically without a precision. Okay, mock design is generally without a precision over here. Now, when I say mock design is without a precision, how does it look like? So it's more or less like this. Let me show you one of the mock design that I have out here. So for our abstract application, this is also you need to take approval from, okay, customer or client. So take a approval from customer or client over here. These are few things that we definitely plan, by ourselves out here. Now, when we say mock design, it's a rough design without a precision. Let me share my whiteboard with you. Okay, so let me go back to just a minute. My whiteboard, Microsoft Whiteboard is about to start. Give me a minute. I need a minute. I'll need another minute. It's taking more time than desired. Rather, why not just go and put up maybe certain things in the, I can say Zoom whiteboard itself. So let me do one thing. Let me put up here a few stages. So in general, what we do here in the design itself is this. Let me put these guys bit aside. Okay, here's what I'll do. In here, there are two aspects which we have in design. Okay, one is your technical design. Okay, so technical design that we do, and second one is your UI perspective. So from the UI perspective over here, UI design. Then in UI design, there are phases again, which is something which is called as, while you do the UI design, there are, you can say, people who come in picture. Okay, the very first thing is UX, usability experts come in picture, and something which is called as UI designers come in picture. Okay, I won't be focusing on UX right now, but then just to understand, typically in UI design over here, you'll find out there are also phases that we go through. One of the phase that we have over here is we do mock-up. Okay, mock design, I would say. Then there is another thing that we have got out here, which is something which is called as wireframe. Okay, and there is another thing that we have got, which is called as wireframe, and then there is something which is called as visual design that we go with. Okay, in general, what does this thing mean over here? And then why exactly so many things exist over here? So let's try to understand it first. Normally, if we see these are the I mean, technical design is something which we will see afterwards, because this is the session, this entire session is about this designing part only. Okay, today's session is all about designing part only. But then when it comes to specifically second part, UI design, what does mock design mean? Now that is something which I have shifted. Okay, this particular portion that I mentioned just now, mock design, this is something is what is shifted out here. Okay, this is the exactly same thing that you see out here right now. Okay, so considering this is a pre-work, okay, already done over here, so this particular part is already moved into something which is called as your what we called as analysis phase. Okay, so mock design, in a sense, as I said, you get an approval from your client for these things, right? You take approval about use case, so that you will tell your customer, okay, these are the users we have identified, and these are the actions that user can take in this way. Confirm the flow from the customer, get a approval, get a sign off about it, which means there won't be any changes then onwards. So flow diagram. So you convey something like, you can say this is how the data will flow into your entire application. And then comes up something which is called as your mock design, which means without a precision, you will have a kind of, you can say, applications understanding, your understanding wise, you will find out some sort of, you can say, maybe mock-up design created. Now, when I say mock-up design, what does it mean? Now, I guess whiteboard is already started. Okay, there it is. Just a minute. Now I'll share my screen with you. So let me share Microsoft Whiteboard with you. Okay, this is it. This is about, you can say, Upstack only. So what you see right now in front of you, if you just look at it, just a minute, it's about to zoom out. As you can see over here, it's like this. Your entire what we call as current screen that you see. Okay, I should say again this way. As you can see here, there's a login page which we have put up. So imagine a situation that your customers have given you a requirement, and then customer said, okay, maybe based on their understanding, what you have said is, okay, there's a login thing required, there's a sign in thing required. There's a forgot password, there's a new user register here, kind of you can say buttons that we will require. And this is how the page will look like. So look at the left hand side of the image right now that you can see. This left hand side of the image ultimately is without a precision. Look at the buttons. They are just hand drawn buttons. Okay. Look at those star marks that we have over here. Those are without a precision again. So this is just to convey, okay, this is how we will have a UI like. It's a rough UI that you design maybe on a plain paper or maybe on what we call it as on some tool you can use just like a MS Paint. And maybe if at all you see it on a normal desktop based browser, on the right hand side you will find out how user will view it specifically on mobile screen also. Again, it is not as per the precisions. Okay, so there can be some login button that you can sign in button and so on. You can obviously just convey this is what it looks like. So this way drawing this UI won't take a time. Okay, and that way it becomes easy for end user and customer as well to visualize how the application will look like. Okay, or how the flow will be, because if you put a flow in here itself, like this is what user will do, then he'll move on to the next screen we will have simple blocks shown that user can actually go and do a booking here specifically for a visit. Maybe he can just ask for a consultation from a doctor. He can just go and maybe let's say look at his profile, change his password and so on. So imagine a situation if at all you ultimately put up some sort of, you can say, mock-up UI like this. Normally, user can visualize that, okay, this is how the flow will be. There is no what we call as precision. There is no color combination over here. It's just a rough design. We will call it as a mock-up design. Okay. Mock-up design drawing is simple because it's not as per the precision. That's the reason you can quickly draw. You can quickly convey this is how it will look like. You can quickly open some competitors application and you can just ask user, did you mean this? If user says sign in doesn't suit good, I mean at that location, sign in should be somewhere on the top side also. So you can just ask user, okay, is it not true that it will look bad? Maybe user will say something like, you can, instead of those star marks, maybe something like you can say detailed messages will help. If at all we have username is required, password is required, kind of a thing out there. So obviously here you can just tell or show user some sort of, you can say, sample snapshots, some competitors, you can say applications, if any. And that way what we can do is we can just try to get more out of user, like what exactly you want, by showing some sample pieces. And then we can just have that sample, you can just put up without a precision on something like, you can say, mock design. So if this is a mock design, let's say if this is the mock design, then I would say something like, let's say, a login screen when it comes to, okay. So suppose in an actual login screen, if I design something like this, just imagine a situation. If I do something of this sort in design, UI design, suppose I literally draw a black and white design over here. Suppose there is something of this sort. Now I have got, let's say, a login screen to be put up on a screen like this. Okay. Now imagine a situation over here. There is something which is like, let's say, a logo over here, for example. Okay. Imagine a situation over here. We have got something like this. Let's say you just convey to user. Okay. This is where your username will be asked. Okay. This is exactly where password will be asked. Okay. And then there can be some small, so-called, you can say, boxes that you can put up here. And then you can just tell user, okay, this is how it will look like. I would simply say, I'll just go over here. Okay, maybe more like this. Let's put this somewhere over here, this way. And you can just convey user, okay, now after this, there will be some sort of, you can say, login button that we will have out here. Okay, simple login button out here. After this. So imagine you ultimately put up a black and white content, but with precision. No actual logo, but then just a box specifically for a logo. Okay, so you draw something with respect to precisions and you just convey user, okay, this is what we will have out here. I'll just put in here, let's say, sign in. So this is what I'll put it, sign in. Let me take it here a bit down. So this is what we can convey to end user. This is how the, you can say, rough UI will look like. So after you are done with mock UI that you saw on the other whiteboard just now, this particular black and white diagram that you see with the precision, but with blocks. Normally, I can simply call this more like a wireframe in this case. Okay. Now this particular part that you see out here, okay, this is more or less wireframe that I would say. So this is your wireframe that you see. Okay. So this is your wireframe out here. Let me put it again on the bit left or right. Just to ensure that this is something which is different. Okay, so this is your wireframe. Now mock design is obviously picked up, you can say, bit early. Okay, so mock design is taken into the requirement analysis phase, and then we will have a kind of, you can say, raw design without a precision. So I would say over here, a raw design without a precision. So raw design, okay, is what I would say out here. This is something which mock-up design would mean out here, which you saw some time back. And then after that, with the precision, you will have this black and white diagram put up. How do you share these diagrams? Normally, wireframes are shared with a customer or a client using something which can be so-called, you can say, PDFs, or something which can be so-called, you can say, yeah, PDF, or I'll just put it here, PDF or images format. So you normally share these things with your customer in PDF and images format. Okay. Once customer approves this, what you do is you actually fill in the colors into it. Okay. It means what you do is you will see after this, they will be fill in the colors is what happens over here. So now fill the colors. Yeah. Fill colors. Okay. And then based on whatever contract you have signed with your customer or client, what you do is you can show multiple number of, or you can have multiple number of combinations put up. So based on the understanding, you can put up multiple colors, you can put up some, you can share maybe two different designs or three different designs with color combinations to the end customer, and customer can pick up any of the combination that suits. Okay. There can be some changes suggested, which you can revert based on how many changes are, supposed to be entertained, to the end customer. Based on your contract, obviously, you will do that. So field colors is what you'll put up here. Field colors, in a sense, that becomes to get visual design, I would say. Okay. Normally to draw the, what I would say, mock-up design. Okay. You will use a tool like, you can use MS Paint itself. Okay. You can use whiteboard itself that we have used just now. So use MS Paint, whiteboard, or for that matter, even paper will do. A normal plain piece of paper will also do out here. In case of wireframes, you can use something which can be, tools like, you can use Photoshop or Corel Draw, because you are going to want to generate images here, or you can generate something which can be MS Paint. It can be anything. Okay. I normally use something which is called as mind mapping tool over here. Okay. So mind map is something I use. Okay. It's up to you what kind of a tool to use. It's up to you, because you just have to ultimately generate some sort of, you can say, images. So you can use these tools like Photoshop or mind map. And then finally, for visual design, when it comes to, you will find out we as in users or designer people, they'll use something which can be, I would say, Dreamweaver. Okay. Or they can use something which is called as expression design, like tools, expression design or expression web. So they can use these tools specifically for finally generating, so called, you can say, the visual design over here. So tools can vary definitely, but then you have to understand a basic difference between these three. Mock design is without a precision, simple black and white, and then you can say it can be, it is too rough. It can be on plain paper as well. When it comes to wireframe, it is typically black and white with the precision, but then more like, you can say, block representations. You will not see actual logo there, but you will see a word called as logo inside a block. Okay. And then ultimately you just share all these in a flow with the customer in PDF and images format, as a flow in PDF and images format. Once customer approves it, then you fill in the color, you put visual design, and you actually show customer how it will look like in a PDF and images format. Get approval for that. And then finally, you will see actual so-called you can say generation of so-called you can say content can be done. So visual design, and you'll find out actual markup generation can happen over here. So actual, maybe let's say user interface generation, which can be used by end you can say developer. So whoever are the developers, they can actually go and maybe start using that design. So obviously, based on the technology you can pick up here, like, okay, I need to generate something which is called as HTML, or I need to generate something which is called as XSL. So obviously, based on technology, you can pick up, like whether we need to generate something which is called as maybe HTML here, or whether we need to generate something which is called as maybe XAML here, or something which is like, I would say, generate something like maybe XSL over here. So obviously it all depends, okay, like what exactly we need to generate. But then these tools can definitely help you, okay. So this is something which is from the UI design perspective. So this entire flow that you see from what we call it as raw design, okay, which is like your mock design. So from a raw design out here to something which is called as end HTML design. This is something which is a flow that your, I can say, designer will go through all the time. Okay. So I will just put it here this way. This is how we will go in terms of design of a UI. Now comes up next thing. Here, this UI design, like generation of HTML to be done, or generation of XAML to be done, or generation of XSL to be done, you'll find that these things obviously depend on what technology is being picked up by this guy, a technical design guy over here. Now let's focus on this particular part, this particular aspect, which is more important. Okay, so what exactly we need to decide over here? So what do we do exactly in this case? So what exactly do we do in technical design? That's why I mean to discuss this, we'll be taking another whiteboard by simply clearing this part. So I'll be clearing this diagram now, and then I will be talking about technical design. So when it comes to technical design, technical designers are ultimately architect people, and who are going to go and decide what technology to use. They are going to go and decide, you can say, what we call it as what tools to use. And then obviously they will also have some inputs given, something like what sort of budget do we have? What sort of resources we already have? What sort of trends are there in the market? What exactly competitors are using? Okay. So you'll find that all these aspects are considered, and then a technology is picked up, and then the designing is done. Okay, so let's switch to technical design. Okay, one quick question: are we clear with whatever we have discussed so far? I hope everyone is there, and those who feel like it is clear, just put it in the QA window, guys. Just waiting for your answer. Okay, waiting for more answers. 4 people have answered. How about others? That's done in the, I can say, design phase itself, Subro. So when you say design, so normally there are so-called, you can say, technical design and UI design. Okay, these two parts that we have got. So in technical design, we will define the architecture, while in UI design, what we do is we will simply have, you can say, as per the procedure, mock designs done first, which means you take approval for wireframes, and then later on you will take approval for visual design. Okay, you don't get approval for, I mean, you don't go for a visual design approval unless until you have a mock. I mean, you first have a mock shared with the customer, something like you, just like you convey use case first, you share flow diagram first, just to ensure that your understanding is correct, and at the same time you will also have a raw design put up. So once you have approval, you just have to put it as per the precision inside the what we call it as wireframe format. Once you get approval for wireframe, you will go for visual design. Then you will put a color combination based on the need. You can just get the final sign off that yes, this is exactly the UI that I needed. And then parallelly, a technical guy can actually go and do the architecture over here. Make sense? Okay, great. So now about the technical person. Now what exactly technical person is going to go and do out here? So let's try, you can say put up maybe, these understandings down in technical terms. So let me clear this diagram and let me put up here what exactly a technical person is going to go and do over here. So I'll put here technical design. Okay. So when it comes to technical design, what exactly is an architect is going to go and understand or consider? So few things which are always inputs to the technical designer, or ultimately an architect, I would say technical design or architecture. So to this guy there will be input given, like there will be input like, okay, um what's the, you can say, current technology trend. So I would say in terms of, you can say, technology, what's the current trend, okay, based on application type and users and its desired users. Yeah. Then we will also decide over here, just like what is the current technology need. Just like that, we will also have some more inputs. Something like, so-called, you can say, what rivals or competitors are using. What technology, I should say, rivals or competitors are using. If there is a, if any, I should say, which means we need to understand that competitors may not be always there. Okay, it can be a pioneer app itself. So if any, then we need to find out what they are using, what they're offering over here. Next thing is what you can say. So I can say resources we already have. Resources in the sense developers. So what resources or use? I mean, people who are going to go and work on that application actually. So what resources we already have. Yeah. So if we pick up some technology initially, which means if we think of some technology initially, in that case, maybe some technology or some framework. In that case, here, will the current resources that we have, will they be sufficient? I mean, can they work directly? Can the existing resources work as is without any efforts? Do they need a training? Okay, then how difficult will it be? So how long the technical learning curve will be. And the very final thing which comes up is, what's the timeline, maybe deadline, that is given to us. It should not happen that it ultimately takes much of a learning curve, takes much of a time from your project deadline or so, that way. And then obviously what's the final budget that we have got. Obviously this is obviously in combination or in communication. Certain things may not be known to the technical designer or technical architect immediately, because obviously budget may not have been discussed. Something called, as you can say, project deadline may have been discussed, but then something like, you can say, how many resources we need to hire and so on. Those things we can always have a discussion along with, so called, you can say, technical managers or in general product managers. Okay, so obviously these people need to sit together and then they need to find out some answers about, you can say, these things. So if at all we already have some resources and we can use them, then obviously it's going to be a fruitful thing because they're already working. We need not find new people. But if at all they need a training, then how difficult it will be for them to learn this new technology or maybe something that we plan for. Is it easy to hire new people then from a market for this particular project? That also can be discussed. So point is, all these answers are captured, and then accordingly we'll find out, we will decide over here. Okay, what we'll do is we will have this thing fixed up, maybe this thing made up in this technology, or they can say in these many days, and then maybe these people are going to go and do these kind of, you can say, tasks. Such things can be planned, you can say, in detail later on, but then we need to have answers to all of these first. Now when it comes to technical design, okay, based on current technology trend in industry for such kind of application types, and then what technology rivals are using, you'll find out. Rivals may be using a technology or using a thing which maybe, let's say, they developed application on maybe 2 years ago, but currently the trend has changed. So why can't we just go and use with the current trend over here? If the current trend comes in picture, do my developers know it? If yes, let's use it. If no, give them some time so that they can upgrade. If they can't do it within desired time frame or so, let's hire people from the market. If we hire people from the market, the budget should increase in that case, because by hiring new people in the market. Okay, point is, you'll find out all these things are kind of, we can say, related to each other. Okay, now when it comes to, maybe let's say, technology being used over here, so take an example here. Any technical guy, architect, will always have something like maybe options available in terms of technology. Just to take an example, so in case of abstract application, when we say, so let's say abstract application, if I pick up, so in abstract application, you will see that abstract application is a web application. Okay, so the first of all, it's a web application. Okay, then in a web application, what sort of so-called, you can say, technologies we have in a market? So if it's a web application, we have famous trends in the market, okay, that we can use over here. Something like Java on server side, we can use .NET, or we can use something which can be PHP. Okay, but then only developing Java, .NET, PHP like applications also, maintenance will be higher end. Do you want low maintenance? If you want low maintenance, then go for something which can be not JSP, but then go for something which can be Spring, go for something which can be Spring Boot. Okay, today go for something which can be I would say Struts, let's say, which is not in use that way. Okay, if you're using .NET, let's say you pick up this technology, then you can go for ASP.NET. You can go for, rather I would put here another one, plain JSP as well. Over here comparison becomes easy. Then over here, then I would go and pick up over here ASP.NET. I'll pick up here ASP.NET MVC. MVC, or I'll pick up here ASP.NET MVC Core. Okay, this is what I'll use out here. If I'm using PHP, okay, if I'm using PHP, I have options again out here. So I may plan to use in PHP something which can be plain PHP. I can plan to use over here something called as Laravel. I can use over here something which can be simple, maybe code igniter. I can use over here something like, let's say, Zend as in another framework over here. It's up to you. What do you want to use? Now, obviously, here a technical challenges that we have now is a technical architect will have to first of all decide if it's an abstract application, are we also targeting to a mobile over here? So is it web app which is targeting to another aspect now comes in picture. So are we targeting, what sort of devices are we targeting? So what devices are target devices over here, which means if there is something which is called as devices, is it a mobile user, is it a tablet user, or is it a desktop based browser users that we are targeting over here? Okay, or star for that matter. So what are we targeting in the first place over here? Do we have any intention of developing a mobile application later on? So are we also developing a mobile app as well over here? These are certain answers that an architect must have. Okay, that way. Now, obviously, here, if I pick up any of this technology for that matter, so obviously, nowadays the trend has little changed, which means when it comes to technical architect, earlier we used to, blindly believe, but then so that, client should not find that he or she is getting bullied over here. So in terms of technical understanding, so what normally client people do right now or currently, they also hire some technical person who can actually go and have an overall lookout that what exactly these people are up to, what exactly this team is going to go and do, what exactly architect has decided also. So somebody, some technical person who is ultimately a client POC is just going to monitor all this activity. And obviously, if at all something fishy is something can be seen, there can be a counter question which can be directly asked from the client's, I can say, what we call it as perspective, to, let's say, architect or even a team member directly. And ultimately what we'll have is, here a technical architect must be able to, so what you can say, justify his answer, or justify his, you can say, choice of technology, or choice of maybe particular API in that case. Because ultimately at the end of the day, some customer or some client is going to go and pay, somebody who is going to go and invest money is going to go and expect some ROI, right? So point is, which technology will we pick up now? So if at all we pick up specifically for Upstack application, if I pick up Java, then I need to convey over here, why did I use Java in the first place over here? So why not .NET and why not PHP over here? Okay, because these are competitors in the market. Then maybe I have to justify as a client in such cases, okay, I picked up Java. The first of all, maybe it is open source. Okay, it is open source over here. Maybe I would say something which is called as maybe hosting. When you develop application and you put it on the final server, then hosting of such application is available at a cheaper cost. Okay, so hosting is cheaper in cost that way. Okay, what else? Then something like resources are available, you can say easily. That can be one thing that we can have over here. Okay, now if at all these are the things that you have conveyed over here, maybe I picked up here database like, let's say, MySQL, for example. I will also have to justify why did I use here something which is called as MySQL as a database. Again, why did not use .NET? Maybe licensing cost. So when it comes to hosting, Windows licensing cost is something that we will end up paying, wherein Java can be hosted with Ubuntu or Linux. When it comes to something, what is, why did not you pick up PHP then? Because PHP developers are not that many compared to Java and .NET developers that we have. So PHP, from resources perspective, we simply scrapped. So you'll find out, and that too, like Laravel and Code Igniter developers are too less in market. So you'll find out you can justify such things from this angle, that whatever we did, it's for your own benefit only. So you can convey these facts, and you can actually go and convey the reason behind using Java over here. So let me do one thing now. Suppose if I just go and switch my context to the Upstack applications technical stack. So in Upstack application, we actually have got several layers over here. So one of the first thing that we have here is database. Okay, there is something which can be some web server side over here. So a web server side, yeah. Okay, and then there can be, so-called, you can say, a browser side or client side over here, browser or client side, that way. And then these three levels of technical stack we need to pick up right now. So when it comes to database also, here we have variety of different options, but then in Upstack we will pick up something which is called as MySQL over here. Okay, we'll pick up MySQL over here. Over, when it comes to, we'll pick up MySQL over what? Over something which is called as, let's say, Oracle, over SQL Server, over maybe other databases. So I will just pick up over here. Oracle is another competitor. We have got something called as SQL Server. We have got something which is called as Mongo. We have got something which is called as Document. We also have something which is called as Cosmos over here. Now, when we say something like these are the, what we call it as, these are the, let's say, maybe databases that we have. So why did I pick up, first of all, something which is called as MySQL in this case? So let's understand it. So a justification must be, like, architect must be able to provide some sort of justification out here. Why did I pick up MySQL? So options that we can have over here are like this. So first of all, we did not pick up Oracle because of the licensing cost that we have out here. So we did not pick up Oracle because of licensing cost. So licensing cost is higher. Okay. Now, when it comes to SQL Server, licensing cost is even more higher over here. Why did not we pick up Mongo, Document, or Cosmos? Because our data is just going to be a plain text data, which is going to come down from a UI. It's a fixed pattern data, which means when I say user one's data, users one data and users two's data, it will be similar pattern, which means there will be users name, there will be users age, there will be users gender, there will be users address, and so on. So it's the same pattern data, just like you can have it inside Excel. Now, when it comes to something like Mongo document and Cosmos, it would be more like we are not actually collecting data from the WhatsApp feeds, WhatsApp rather messages, or Facebook feeds, or something Twitter tweets. Okay, so we are not collecting data from variety of different sources. It's not a NoSQL data. That's the reason we will not be using NoSQL databases like Mongo document and Cosmos. Then why did I pick up MySQL? Because first of all, it's relational. So is Oracle and SQL, but cost-wise, it's literally negligible. MySQL is often provided free with the web hosting by hosting providers that we have got. So why not we just use MySQL in such cases? So cost-wise cheap, and at the same time, we can have here database, maybe connectivity APIs available easily. That's the reason we picked up MySQL as API. Okay. How about server side? On the web server side, when you pick up on web server side, specifically for connectivity with the database, let's say you can pick up something like Java. Obviously, the answer you already know over here, that it's open source, is so called you can say cheap resources are rather cheap cost resources are available, and so on. So we picked up Java for some reason in this case. Okay. Then the next thing we pick up over here, only plain Java will not help over here. So we pick up over here something which is called a Spring over here. So Java, maybe let's say Spring over here. Why? Because first of all over here, Spring as in framework. Okay, specifically. Why is that? Because maintenance wise, it will be easy to maintain the application. So maintenance is low over here. So maintenance is low over here, super low, I should say, over here, which means any changes which comes up tomorrow, without telling the other code file, you can actually go and do the changes at X file that you require to do the change. Without telling other files and other code snippets, you can simply go and let's say have the maintenance done, which means changing some X things actually, it's designed in such a way that it won't actually go and need a change in Y thing also, which means easily we can actually go and do the so-called you can say what we call as code maintenance that way. So code maintenance is super low. That's one thing that is the reason behind Java Spring, is what I would say. There's also struts available. There's also Spring Boot available, other Spring struts available, and some other frameworks are also available. But then we would prefer here Java Spring. Obviously, we can have a discussion again after further this Spring and Spring Boot, but that is something which we haven't reached as of now. Okay, so Java Spring, we'll have here as maintenance is super low. That's one of the what we call it as vital and main reason to go with something which is called as Java Spring Stack. Now what? After that, let's say we would want to do and communicate with so-called you can say let's say Oracle, rather these MySQL tables. Then comes up another thing over here. Let me put it here. This is one part that we picked up. Let me take it here. Let me take it here, and let me take this guy out here. Now, what happens is typically if I'm storing users data, let's say, so for storing users data, I can always have, just like we can have an Excel sheet, I have here, let's say users table. So I can have number stored, I can have name stored, I can have address stored, I can have maybe number of other things stored over here. Okay. And take an example now, I may have some sort of, you can say data available out here, something like one Mahesh, and let's say another one which is called as let's say Pune. So if I have a data maybe like this, let's say put up out here somewhere here. Okay, so what I want to do is normally in object-oriented programming languages that you and me know, normally what happens is out here developers do development like this. In case of Java, I would always go and present this table in a class format. So I would use something like let's say class called as user. There's a class to table mapping. Okay, if user is a database table, I'll have a user as a class out here. I will have integer number here. I will have string name here. Okay, and then I will have string, let's say address over here, for example. Okay, more or less like this. So normally in case of OOP, okay, in case of object-oriented programming languages, what I would always do is I would prefer something of this sort. Okay, so I will have literally mapping between the class user and the user table with respect to database over here. So I would say table user over here. So a table user, and then obviously these things can be mapped with respect to number, name, and address can be mapped with respect to something like what I would say, with respect to getter setters. So number, name, and address are columns inside a table, and these become so-called you can say getter setters in case of maybe let's say class. We'll come back to that later. But as of now, this mapping needs to happen over here. Okay, maybe I'll just move this out here. That's sufficient. Okay. We used table and if you can say mapping out here. Maybe I'll just highlight it over here like this. Okay, this is one table, let's say we have got out here. Okay, so this kind of you can say mapping is something which is done. But now to do this mapping, one will either manually do this mapping, that class user represents a table user in case of database. But then instead of you doing this mapping, one can very well go and use over here, since it's a Spring application, one can use something which is called as Java Persistent APIs. Okay, so some JPA framework is something that we will pick up over here. Okay, so we will use Java Persistent APIs to basically get class user mapped with table user and vice versa over here, because it goes very well with respect to Java Spring. Okay, so now we have got something called as JPA, as in I can say another, so what I can say feature available. So I will use Java, reason you know. I picked up here Java Spring, reason you know. I picked up here MySQL, reason you already know. And I picked up JPA because the mapping can be made easier over here instead of manually doing anything over here. So we picked up JPA. What else did you pick up? Specifically for unit testing. Unit testing is typically done by a developer. So specifically for unit testing purpose, developer may be using over here. So for unit testing, Java unit testing or JUnit over here. So I would say we will use JUnit framework over here for unit testing over here. It goes well with respect to all Java projects that way. So JUnit specifically for unit testing framework is what we will pick up out here. So you can always go and justify why did I pick up Java? Why did I pick up Spring? Why did I pick up JUnit specifically for this application? Once you justify all of this, you will also have to convey that what sort of tools you are also using. So specifically for Java Spring and maybe let's say Java Spring like applications, I would use something like a software. I will use something which is called as IntelliJ in this case. So specifically for developers or coding purpose, I will use something which is called as IntelliJ over here. So IntelliJ over here. So IntelliJ idea is something which is a, I can say maybe addition over here. So it can be something called as editor that I will use. Again, some of you may have a question, something like, why can't I just use something like Eclipse also? Yes, you can also use Eclipse as well. But then IntelliJ along with something called as, Spring, it actually goes very well in market. Okay, that's the reason we will pick up over here that kind of, you can say maybe, editor. It's up to you. You can, use any editor, and then companies can have variety of different, you can say options offered to you. But then we will be using, at least in abstract application from Upgrad, you'll find out we'll be using IntelliJ as an editor over here. Obviously, some installations are required. So that is something which is you need to do. MySQL installation is something that you will do. So simple workbench installation or simple MySQL installation will help. Okay. Then it comes to client side. Normally what happens over here is a web server side is something which is like, a 24/7 running, maybe server can be there. Okay. So they can be, so what I can say, some web host which can be picked up out here, who's going to want to simply help you do the hosting process. Okay, so I'll just put over here. There can be some webpack that I can use. Okay, so I'll just go and put up over here like this. Okay, some web server side technology or stack we can use. Then obviously using Java, Spring and so on, what you will do is you will write a code. Okay, out here you will write a code which will be able to get the only data over here. Okay, get here pull push data, pull or push the data. That's the typical thing that we keep on doing over here. So using Java code, we will be pulling or pushing the code over here. That's the thing that we'll keep on doing. But then which kind of a data, in which format the data will be ultimately submitted. So we do have here options available. So I can plan to use data in JSON format, or I can plan to use data in XML format over here. Then why are we using, we will be picking up something which is called as, let's say, JSON format, and we will not be using something called as XML over here. Again, why is a question. So why are we using JSON? Because it's lightweight. It's 30% lightweight compared to XML over here. XML though have an advantage called as XML can have a schema available, and JSON we ultimately will have to, we'll have to agree on the data format on the both sides. Since both sides are going to be developed by us, so ultimately JSON becomes one of the easiest solution. One of the frequently used data format today in the market is JSON. Okay, so we'll be ultimately expecting some JSON data inside Java, and we'll be giving also out some JSON data. So we will only be transferring data from left and right. Okay, so we'll be simply pulling and pushing the data. That's what we will keep on doing over here for data transfer between client technology and server technology. Now, why exactly we need two different technologies? Why can't we just need one over here? There's also a reason behind that. When you pick up maybe let's say only server side technology, and if at all server has to generate everything, server will be too much burden. And then comes a trend now, something like what we typically do is this. On the what we call it as browser side, since every client today is what I would say is having enough amount of what I would say, enough amount of, you can say, RAM, enough amount of CPU available, enough amount of, you can say, bandwidth available in terms of internet speed. So why can't we just outsource? Why can't we just offload some functionalities from the server side to the browser side? Why can't browser do something by itself? Why everything has to be done by a server only? So in such cases, more of a client side logic is something which we as a developers, we desire to write down now. Okay. Now, when it comes to something called as let's say I would say client side technology also, so the logic we end up writing in case of JavaScript. Okay, so we end up writing a logic in a JavaScript. So here on a client side, I would need something which is called as what UI is made with HTML. We'll be using HTML5, the latest version. Then do you want to make that UI work on, let's say, a variety of different screen sizes, browsers, tablet browsers, mobile browsers or so? Start using something which is called as Bootstrap as a CSS library over here for responsiveness of the application. Okay. And then do you want to do some logic like, pulling the data, pushing the data, presenting some data in the UI format also? Then we will be using React over here. Then obvious concerns which comes up over here, why not use Angular? Why not use over here for that matter something which is, let's say, maybe Vue.js and so on over here? Okay, React and popular another framework is, you can say, Angular over here. So we will not be using Angular because it's going to be bulky over here. Is React lightweight compared to Angular? Yes, it's lightweight over here. And then ultimately all routing and everything can be handled over here. Then inside the React itself, we can have options. Use something called as Redux, use something which is called as I would say Flux. So you can pick up a framework based on the need, but as of now the base, you can say maybe library which is picked up on the browser side is something which is called as React.js over here. So here you will find out, you will have to be able to justify here that okay, I use HTML5 because that's something which today's browsers understand. We are using Bootstrap so that UI becomes easily, you can say, changeable, or user UI can be easily changed with literally no logic using Bootstrap. And then React is something which is there, which is lightweight, specifically for pulling, pushing, and presenting the data over here. Okay, pull, push, and present. That is something React is, you can say, very good at. So on client side, I'll be using this technical stack ultimately. This is what we will convey. Okay, this is something which is picked up. This is something which is picked up over here. And these are the things that you see we picked up. Again, for development for client side, you can continue using IntelliJ IDEA editor itself, which means you can very well continue using the same editor for all the development that we have got. Okay, so that way communication, that way, so called, you can say, these things become super easy to work with. So you have to be able to ultimately, what I would say, you know, justify why did you use specific technology or specific, so called, you can say, content. Okay, so there has to be a what we call as nice justification to it, being technical architect in this case. Okay, and then obvious things comes up once you decide it's going to be something like React, for example. Okay, since you decided it's going to be React and HTML5, now obviously designers can get a help here, and designers can decide, okay, let's do one thing now. Let us start using something which is called as what I would say. Now let's start using something which is called as HTML designs. In the sense, now the final designers, UI designers, can go and convert their visual designs into the HTML format, because HTML is something you have decided on the left hand side. Okay, React code is something obviously developer will code, just like Angular code will be coded by developer, just like Bootstrap will be referred by developer. This is developer job, but at least the basic skeleton generation is something which can be done by designer. So since you have taken a decision that you will be working on HTML5 for UI perspective, you can very well ask designer that for whatever visual design you will develop, whatever PDF and images you develop, I want a HTML for it. And then you can very well get HTML from the designer itself. And then you can very well start using it and manipulating it using React that way. So one should be able to convince the, you can say, end customer, like, why did we pick up this technology or tool? Okay, IntelliJ community edition is free. So obviously community developers, or you can say individual developers like you and me, can very well do it. Companies may have to end up paying some little cost specifically for the purpose of development over here. So obviously licensing cost will be there. Open source softwares are actually, free for individuals, but when it comes to companies who are ultimately commercially earning based on top of that usage of that software, you may end up paying some sort of, you can say, license cost, which will be minimum obviously, but it will be there by default. That's how the open source is typically driven, or it can be driven by simple charity or donations that way. So did you understand this so far? Did you understand this so far? Just put it in, or put it in the QA window, sorry. Okay, that's good. So any questions in here so far before I proceed? Yeah, so we picked up React because of like, many things. So it's like, first of all, there is something which is called as um, uh, first of all, it's a JavaScript library. Okay, it works on something which is called as a concept which is called as virtual DOM concept. I mean, I'm not going to go into bit of technical of it, but then I'll just explain. Normally, whenever any changes happen, okay, maybe you click on some button, maybe you try to delete some sort of, you can say, a post. What happens is, whatever UI updations which are required, those are, you can say, way faster compared to, you can say, Angular in case of React. Okay, React is something which is library from Facebook. Okay, and then based on React, there are, like, frameworks available for something called a state management. There is something called as Redux and Flux. But barring that, React is developed by Facebook, and React is way faster compared to, you can say, Angular. Okay, that's the first part. That's the reason people are, moving towards React. There's another theory though. If you have, like, since now we have separated concerns, server side technology is different and client side is different. So you can always have this particular portion. Okay, specifically, this is something which is extra I'm talking about. Whatever we have here on the left hand side, you will find out these things can be offered, okay, to some sort of other frameworks. Now this is not in our Upstack application technical stack, but I will just tell you, you can say, another advantage. You can take React, Bootstrap, HTML5 application, and you can very well hand it over to some other frameworks, like, if you've heard of it before, Ionic, or something which is called as PhoneGap. Okay, these are tools, and you can actually go and package your entire application, browser side application, as an APK or as an so-called, you can say, iOS application over here, which means without putting much of an effort, you will find out you will have your mobile apps ready. So you can develop once and you can actually go and deploy it on multiple locations. So your APK will be there, and we can just keep on using same thing on server side, which means same Java, same MySQL will be there. But then your clients will be either using mobile apps, or your clients can be using something called as browsers over here. Okay, but then this is not something which, Upstack wants. So Upstack doesn't have this particular part, considered. But then yes, if you have something which is client side separately developed, like HTML5, Bootstrap and React, or Angular, or JavaScript for that matter, you'll find out one can very well go and take this content as a mobile app itself. That is the reason the bootstrap is going to go and play a very vital role. So to get your client side development code switched to something which is called as mobile app, this guy is going to go and play a very vital role. Bootstrap, that is. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully it is clear. Okay, so now here, while I conveyed like what sort of editor you will be using, what exactly the technical stack ultimately stands as, and once you are able to like understand like okay, this is what we want to use. Once you understand that there is going to be something which is called as HTML in here. Okay, once you understand it's going to be HTML in here. Now since you understand it's going to be HTML, you'll find out now it's time that, give me a minute. Yeah. So I was saying that once you understand, you're going to want to use HTML over here. What you can also do now is you can convey back. Once you understand it's going to be HTML, you can convey back to your designers now. That is, be ready with visual designs and then convert that visual design that you have with a color combination into something called as HTML. So that visual designers, the designers can ultimately use that visual design in a tool like Dreamweaver, and they can generate HTML kind of like a code snippet, which means your HTML will be ready. And then that HTML can be handed over to developers who will use internally Bootstrap or who will use something called as React behind the scene. And then we can continue calling some sort of server-side code, which means development has gone so easy now. That is, if at all teams coordinate, designing team and maybe what we call as coding team, if they coordinate with each other, you'll find out this development can be done in no time. Okay, DB developers can be separately, managing the databases and so on. In Java, if at all you have maybe let's say Spring used or JPA used, you can very well have class generations easily done. And then ultimately, it's just a matter of you can say using some sort of you can say code snippets to pull and push the data, publish that data in a JSON format for which we have ready-made APIs available. And then on the client side, when it comes to something called as HTML, you already have HTML. You just need to write down, I can say maybe plug and play kind of a code using React that way. So it becomes all in all easy development if at all teams coordinate, and if at all, I mean, client will also like it if at all we have a coordination between the teams. Okay, and at the same time, if the requirement was actually correctly captured. If the requirement itself is not correctly captured, then what we develop, it will have a meaning, no meaning at the end of the day. So here, capturing a requirement, understanding the flow, designing the flow is something which is more and more important. But because once you have it clear, once you have the picture in front of you, like, this is how exactly we have to develop, then developing or for development, you'll find that multiple resources are going to be there for help you. Like, IntelliJ IDEA editor or JPA or something which is called as, let's say, maybe UI generation using some tools like Dreamweaver, it will be easier for you then. Okay. Now, when we pick up something like maybe these technologies, tools, let's say we have utilized, okay, we decided this technology, we decided this, all of it as of now. Now, after this, we actually start with the real development. Now, the question that some of you may have, will we be really developing this entire application from the scratch? Yes, we do understand something called as now design phase. Okay, class needs to be designed, maybe some technical stack we design and so on. But when it comes to something which is like, I would say, from the scratch. So will you be developing all of this from the scratch? So specifically from the, you can say, time frame wise, if I tell you, it is like this: the abstract application that we are planning, that abstract application, we need to be expert in React, then we need to be good at Java, then we need to be good at Spring, we need to be good at JPA and databases too. Okay, so and obviously deployment too. So in such cases, maybe learning this, you can say these technologies in short period of time, like let's say 1 week, for example. Suppose if next week we have a session about, you can say, simple unit testing, so you will find out then what happens is it becomes very difficult to learn this technology in so much of less time span. Then what we do is here is just to help you understand the flow, like how exactly application development process goes through. But then without being expert in React and without being expert in Java and without being expert in databases also, can we develop the application? Of course, yes. Leave the technology and syntax part aside for a while. So what will be given to you is some sort of, we can say, code snippets. So there'll be files given to you. There'll be code snippets given to you. You just have to put up the code and fill in the blank literally, which means skeleton will be given to you, code will be given to you. Once that code falls in the places, you understand like, okay, why that code exists there. You understand why that code is there, but then syntax may not be clear. Absolutely okay. You may not be expert in React in one day, but then the code will fall in place. The code will be conveyed to you, like, what that code does. There will be enough documentation inside the code itself. And then what will be done is it will be conveyed to you, like, how do you run this application? How do you deploy this application? These things will be conveyed. So actually you will not be coding in React, but you will be given a code in a React, which will place at some X location. You will not be coding in Java. You'll be given a code in Java that you will place at proper location. You will not be doing database. You will be given database directly that way. And then ultimately, how this plug and play things work is something which will be conveyed to you. So you don't actually go and develop. You assemble the entire application. Okay, just like you don't manufacture a car. You assemble the parts and you ultimately create a car, right, out of it, or assemble the car ultimately. Just like assembling a PC, you are going to go and assemble the application without learning over here how do we make a tire out of, you can say, raw rubber, for example. That is something which we will not be doing. Okay, so simple building blocks will be given to you and you will just put it in places, and maybe there can be one or two odd places wherein there is no code, and you will be just asked that, okay, look at some sort of existing code and try to define a code with respect to so and so, maybe table, so and so, you can say, feature. So you just have to look and make some changes using analogy, and then maybe write down some sort of code snippets by yourself. It's going to be that easy. Okay, but then after completing this entire course, after completing this, what we call it as the software development sessions that I am conducting, at least, which is like, you can say, typical 3 sessions wherein we'll understand requirement analysis, now design, prototyping, and something called as, let's say, maybe a simple code walkthrough that we will have at the end of the day. You'll find out these things are just going to go and help you give an idea. Okay, this is how the process happens. This is how we go through the entire application process and so on. But in real time, you will be actually coding. Okay, so which means this is something which is just to give you and make a 10 lakh feet view, like how exactly applications are going to get developed. So that's only 10 lakh feet view is what I would say. Okay, so are we clear? Are we clear like what exactly to expect from this session? Wanted to anyway convey designing, I can say, more from the perspective, you can say, what happens in the design phase. So there can be UI design created and they can be so-called, you can say, technical design that can also be created. So are we clear now what to expect from this session? Okay, two have answered right now. Waiting for more. Okay, great. So yeah, so this is what I just wanted to talk about as of now. Okay, so I just wanted to, the whiteboard thing made the things more clear. Okay, I hope this presentation did help you understand the, you can say, typical sequencing we go through. Obviously, after this particular phase, once your so-called, you can say, classes are identified, once your database is identified, what it is, you actually go through real-time coding. So then you will require IntelliJ editor and so on. Okay. So normally architect is somebody who is good at, you can say, understanding the technology and at the same time understanding something called as, let's say, OP based solid principles is what I would say. Okay. So there are certain things that, architects are good at. These people will define, so called, you can say, all bases of your what we call as application, and those base, you can say, classes, interfaces, abstract classes will be shipped to the developer and then developers would simply obey the ultimately what the bases have to say. And ultimately, they will simply implement the base classes, they will implement the interfaces, they will end up writing actual piece of code with respect to databases that way. So things are actually, so-called, you can say, simple skeletons are given to you, and you just need to fill in the blank. It's literally like that. So I mean, overall, I can say entire communication between entire application, why exactly that feature exists. Overall idea will be to stakeholders and something called as architects. All in all, developers, I mean, may want to get a complete view. That is something which is good for their own what we call it as benefit. So if you ever develop any application, try to get a complete, you can say, overall lookout, like where exactly my code is getting used, which feature is using my code, and then overall, you can say, architectural lookout is something which should be the aim at any moment. Okay, so yeah, this is what I wanted to cover, guys, for the day, and yeah, I'm done with it. So if you have any concerns, questions, queries, feel free to put it in the, you can say, in the QA window. And meanwhile, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and put up a poll in front of you, which is just popped up. So let me put up a poll in front of you. Uh, please answer. I mean, please put up the, you can say, fill up the poll and put up any questions if you have in the QA window. I'm there to help you. Okay. 7 have answered right now. Waiting for a couple of more. Okay. So let's do the end now. It's almost 1 minute past. Okay. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for attending the session patiently. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to end the session now. Thank you. Hopefully it was helpful. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you, Lavanya. Thanks, Subro. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Vivek. Now I'll end the session. Thank you.